On today's show, we get our first look at the Ender 5. Stick around. Welcome back to The First Layer. My name's Richard Cleveland. I'm your host here 3 times a week, every Tuesday, Thursday, and a live stream Saturday night. Now, on this show, we explore the world of 3D printing, and today is no different. Today, we are going to get our first look at the Ender 5 from Creality. And if you're new here, I just want to remind you to go ahead and hit that little subscribe button down below. Also, ding that bell so you get notified every time that we do a brand new episode. And you'll get notified so that you don't miss anything. So let's dive in. We got this nice big box. Of course, it was opened by Customs, coming to Canada, of course. And we're going to open it up and we're going to see what's inside. And then we'll get it all laid out on the table and I'll show you what we got going. Let's see how cool this is. You know, these scrapers, they have more than one use. Not just getting things off your bed, but they open boxes really well too. All right, so let's open this up. So what do we have? We have the usual packing material that they use, which I gotta say one thing about Creality, they do pack their products really well. Right up on top is our Creality Ender 5 manual. We'll just get kind of a close-up of that over the shoulder here. You guys can have a look-see at what that is. There we go. So the manual itself is pretty good so far from what I can see. It lays out all the parts, what you have to build. So this is a kit. You are going to have to build it much like the Ender 3. We're going to take it apart. We're going to open up the box and see exactly what power supply we've got in there. We're going to see exactly what we've got in terms of software. It looks like they're using Cura 3.4.1. And a look at the board. Just really quickly kind of scanning the board, which is at the back of the book here, a wiring diagram. It would appear that this is a new board for Creality. It looks very, very similar to the Ender 3 board, but I don't think it is an Ender 3 board. Well, we're going to find out. All right, let's push that offside because who needs instructions? And in the first layer, see what I did there? We have, of course, our screen, which is the typical screen that they use for everything. We have our extruder motor. There we are. Get rid of this box. Now I'm going to go ahead and unbox this whole thing, and then we will lay out all the parts on the table so you guys will get to see them, and then we'll start the build. All right, so we've got everything laid out on the table here. As you can see, we've got our upper frame, our lower frame, our gantry for our bed. We've got all of our parts, our extruder, and our display, and our box of accessories. Let's start with the box of accessories here first. And we'll get the usual suspects, you know, a bag of stuff with all of our tools that we need, that sort of stuff. We get our warranty card and all of our screws and some extra parts. We have our scraper, our filament holder, and our power cord. So we're just going to keep out the 2 that we need, and we'll just put those off to the side for now. On the actual box that holds your power supply and your control board, it has the instructions on how to build it, which is actually pretty cool. But before we go ahead and do that, let's flip it over and open up the back and see exactly what kind of board we have in here and what type of power supply. Now, this is very thin. It's not their typical thick setup. So I'm going to assume, based on what I can see through the screen here that it looks like they have a Meanwell power supply. Now, I could be wrong about that, but it does appear that they may have a Meanwell power supply in here. And they only have 4 hex wrenches in here this time. That's okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take out all of these screws. There's only 4 that hold this on. Put them where we don't lose them. It has nice rubber feet as well. I really like that. Now, if they've done their job, this should be fully... Well, that one's a little tough to get out. It should be fully... Wow, that is really tough to get out. Somebody put this one in and stripped it. Yep, they sure did. That's okay. We can work around that. You're not going to typically open up the bottom of your machine when you first get it, like I do. I'm really concerned to see what type of board and power supply that they have in here powering this machine. Now, the build volume on this is 210 by 210 by 300. So it's not a bad machine. So as we get a look at here, this is not a Meanwell power supply, but it is a 24 volt. This is by Landy. So this, I'm going to assume that this power supply is, well, for lack of a better word, a knockoff of a Meanwell, which doesn't thrill me much, but it's, let's see how well it works. It does have a code on the side. Maybe we can go to their website later on and check out and see what the build process was on this. Now, the motherboard in here is a version 1.1.4, which is the exact same board that comes with the Creality Ender 3 Pro. It's the 1.1.4, so there's nothing significantly different about that. They did their usual by gobbing everything with hot glue. Would I recommend that you change out this board? Probably at some point. This does not have a MOSFET inside the box. So I guess it's going to be to each his own on this. But 2 things that concern me about this is, 1, the gobs of glue like they always do. Not having a MOSFET would probably be a primary concern for me, as well as Landy power supply, which looks to me as if it's a Meanwell knockoff. And again, they've done everything, they've done what they always do, and they put in sleeve bearings on the fans, which we all know I'm not a huge fan of. No pun intended. So let's go ahead and put the screws back in. We'll turn it over and we will start the build. So we've got our screws laid out. The good thing about this is there's only 2 types of screws that come with this entire thing. The M5 25s and some M4 by 10s, which are silver, and we'll figure out what those are for. Comes with a whole bunch of locking washes, so we're just gonna put those aside. We're gonna get our side piece here. We're going to stand it up on edge, and we're just going to go ahead and start putting in these screws. And we will line them up. There we go. Actually line up pretty quickly. You want to make sure that you put these screws in, and I've said this a million times on other builds, you want to make sure that you put these screws in properly, because if you don't, you can end up stripping them, and we certainly don't want to do that. So we're going to go around, put all of these end pieces on. One thing I want to note to you is that when you're looking at these stands or the pillars, there's a hole on one end up at the top, and you'll see that. Let's see if I can get it on this camera here. You see there's a hole there? Those should all go to the top of the printer. So let's go ahead and we'll put this all together. We'll come back and we'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so what you want to do after you've got all of your uprights in place is you want to go ahead and put the frame on. Now, the idea here is make sure that this motor that runs the long rod on both sides to move this axis, which is your y-axis back and forth, that is at the back of the machine. Where the power supply is situated is the front of the machine, and this is the back of the machine. And we're going to show you how that's all going to make sense in just a few minutes. But right now, let's go ahead and start putting our screws in. Now, you're going to find that you've got 2 screws that go into each one. One will go in on the top, and one will go in on the side. And we'll start with the top one first. We'll get that one lined up. It might take you a minute or two to get that lined up correctly. But once you grab it, it's pretty easy. You get the first one in, and this should square up the printer quite a bit. Now, this is not a Core XY. This is still a Cartesian machine. I know it looks kind of like a Core XY, but believe me when I tell you that it is not a Core XY. This is just a Cartesian machine. And how we know that is that we have one for our X-axis, we have one for our Y-axis, and we'll show you the one for the Z-axis in just a few moments. So let's go ahead and get all 8 screws in, and then we will go ahead and start assembling the platform and the heated bed. All right, so now we have to put on our Z carriage, and the Z carriage goes on with just 4 simple bolts. Move all these wires out of our way. And once you've got the bolts aligned, this should line up fairly squarely. Fairly squarely? I'm not sure if that's a word. Fairly squarely.
I like it. We're
pretty squarely around here. So I'm just going to go around and tighten all 4 of these. There's 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top. Should align this, if this was machined properly, it should align it perfectly for each axis. And then we will start to put on the actual bed itself. Now, the bed itself is fairly easy to put on. There's 6 screws that have already been pre-tapped, and they are on this area right here. And if you grab the bed, one thing about this bed I'm not a huge fan of, and that is right here. Let me see if I can get that into camera for you. Okay. On the Ender 3s and on the CR10s, there's a little strain relief that goes on there where it comes from the board. This one does not have it. So to me, that's a bit of a problem. Well, we'll see how well it works, but for now, we're going to go ahead, line this up, and look at the instructions, and it does sit right on top of that plate. So it sits on just like so. We're going to put the other screws, these ones right here, which are the 4x10s. There we go. I'm going to put these 4x10s. You need 6 of them. They've got lock washers, so we're going to use those as well. Your threading is down on the actual axis itself. And we'll get all these put together. We'll start to screw this in and get it all leveled up. All right, so now what you want to do is you want to start putting in the other parts that we need, like the motor for the extruder. We want to put on our LCD and locate and put on our spool holder. Now, the extruder should be 80 millimeters from the top to the top of the bracket that holds it in. Then you just grab your wrench, and because it has hammer nuts on the back, should be easy to get it locked into place. And once you've got one tightened, you should be able to just go ahead and tighten the other one, and they should both be locked into place. Give it a little bit of a extra snug up. As far as the spool holder goes, you want to locate that 150 millimeters from the bottom bracket. So we're going to go up to right there, and that will be the bottom of our spool holder, which is right here. And again, we'll just double check to make sure that we are at the right height. Now I should flip that around because that's the way that they've got it in the picture in the book. Look at that, Mom, I'm using directions. And I would say I'm right about there. Close enough for the girls I went out with. Now watch, I'm going to get a bunch of fan mail from the girls I went out with.
Are you sure it would be fan mail, not hate mail?
Well, it's probably going to be hate mail. Now the only difficult part about this is trying to see what you're doing. When you can't. There we go. I need a longer one. That's what I need, is a longer one. Because I can't get this to sit just right. That annoys me. There we go. We got to turn now. We'll just give that a little snug up. And just before we go ahead, well, it's a little low, but that's okay. That's okay if it's a little low. We could probably go up with it a little bit, but I don't think that's going to matter. So get the other one tightened in. And we will get our spool connected, just like so. Get the locking ring, which is in our bag. And then we're all done with that part of it. All we got to do is put on our LCD, and then we are ready to plug everything in, fire it up, do a bed level, and then start our first print. There we go. There, now it's locked into place. Everything's nice and tight there. Let's put on our LCD display. And again, it's got 2 hammer nuts in it as well. You can see it right there. And we want to make sure that they're orientated the right way. And this might be... Of course, you never have the right one when the right Allen wrench when you need it. The only thing I don't like about Creality is they always seem to put a variety of different screws in. Why not use all the same screws and nuts? That would make life so much easier.
Variety is the spice of life.
There you go. And now we're just going to line those up. Pull that down. And tighten those up. With the wrong one again. There it is right in front of me. Don't you just hate it when things go wrong? I know I do. There we go. There we go. That's on there. We're going to plug in our LCD to number 3 like we did on the Ender 3. And we're going to go ahead and connect all of the wires now to where they are all supposed to go. And you'll find that everything on here is labeled, so it's pretty easy to find out where everything is. So we are going to start here with our nozzle. And we're going to get all the ones for our nozzle. They all have little labels on them, just like so. I don't know if we can get a... cut over my shoulder. Okay, so they've all got these little labels on them, so they show you where everything goes. And we are going to get our thermistor. That is our nozzle thermistor right there. Plug that one in. And there's only one way these plugs can go in, so you can't mess it up. There's our heater. There's our fan. And there is our other fan. And that is where that all goes. Now, we will bring this around. We'll plug this Bowden tube in here. Now, what I want to see is if in here they did do it, which I am a huge fan of. Inside this little baggie right here, which is some spare parts, so spare nozzle and spare outlets for your extruder. They also have these little clips in here, which are very important to have because they help to keep your Bowden tube locked in place. And it looks like there's two different sizes of them. There's a small one and a large one. Let's just see if the extruder has a large one on. It does, so we don't need the larger one. So before we go ahead and put our Bowden tube into the extruder, we're going to put this little blue clip on, and that is going to help keep our Bowden tube locked in place. So now we've got that put in there. I'm going to go ahead, seat our Bowden tube in, and that won't move now. Why do I have two Y's? Oh, that's why I have two Y's. I have two Y's. Why, oh, why do I have two Y's? Makes me a double Y. Let's do the X. There's the X right there. We're going to plug also in the end stop. And these again are all labeled, so they're pretty easy to find. This is our extruder motor, which should where's our extruder? There, right there is our extruder motor right in front of me. Plug that one in. And again, all of these are labeled, so they're pretty easy to find. Our Y. One thing I'm not a big fan of so far is the way that they've got this set up. There's our, well, that's not our Y. Our Y, yes, that is our Y. Right there, look at that. I don't know my Y from my Y. Now, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it in underneath there, so it takes off some of the tension. Cuts the tension. And there we go, that one's plugged in. We should be able to bring that one around the back side here. It's got this cable set up to go this way, which, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that one, but okay. It doesn't really give you anything in the book as far as cable management goes. So if I had to talk about cable management on this, I'm not overly impressed with the cable management yet. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if we can't get everything put together. So that's got to be able to go all the way there. Yeah, I think they could have done a little better job with cable management. But that's just my opinion. And, you know, some people don't think my opinion's worth it. We'll plug in our bed. Let's first check these. Okay, so the XT60 connector looks like it has been installed correctly. And we've talked about XT60 connectors in the past episode, so you can always go and check that out if you like. And finally, we are going to do the last two. And we are going to do the Y first. This is our Y. And we'll plug that one in there. So our end stop is in, and now our motor cable is in. And last but not least, we have to go and plug in our Z axis. So we are going to put this one in the motor mount. And we have to find where this cable goes. Ah, that's where it goes, right up here. Right where it should be. Yeah, cable management on this is a little atrocious. I can see where that can cause some problems, but that is it. So she is all installed. Everything is connected. We are going to plug it in, turn it on, and see what happens. All right, so let's go ahead and level the bed. We've loaded some filament in, but we haven't put it all the way to the hot end yet. We're just going to, we've preheated our bed and our nozzle, so we're just going to home the unit. Auto home, and it's going to come up. And once we get there, all right, let's see where we are. Oh, we got a little bit of space there. So we're going to adjust. Let's just move that over a little bit. What you should do is once you've got it homed, go ahead and just disable all the steppers so you can move things around freely. I'm just going to disable the X and Y. That's kind of a nice little feature. And we'll just move the X up a little bit and we'll see where we're at. We got a lot of room there. And again, you just want to have that little bit of drag. We're going to do the same at the front corner. See where we're at. And we're a little loose there. And we got just a very little bit of drag. Now, just dialing that in. There we go. We'll come back and do the back corner now. And what I like to do is just try and get over that screw. And there we are there. And now we'll go up to this front corner. And we should be right where we want to be. All right, again, we'll just check it one more time. By doing the crisscross pattern that I do, it's really easy to make sure that your bed is as level as it can be. Double check that one again. That's good. Do our last corner. And finally end up back where we started. We should just be doing a micro adjustment here. There we go. So we're all in good shape. Let's go ahead and load in our filament. And we'll take it all the way through till it stops. A little bit that's squished out there. Just get rid of that little blob off there. And we are good to go. So now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to initialize the card. And once you've done that, you can go right to print from SD. And we are going to do a test normal dog. How's that? There we go. So it's going to adjust our temperature just a little bit. It's going to print the dog, and we will be back after that. So we've got our print started. It started at the front of the bed. We're going to show you a time lapse here right now and enjoy the time lapse. You get to see the dog being built, and then we will come back and give you a, kind of our idea of what we think. All right, so good or bad, what do I think overall of the Ender 5? Is it a necessary 3D printer? For the price, it only gives you a little bit more build volume. It's got a 300 millimeter build volume as opposed to the Ender 2, which has a 250 millimeter bed volume or build volume. Now, this also has the same size bed as an Ender 3, so you're not gaining anything in terms of your overall bed space, but you are gaining in the height. Is it a more rigid build? Yeah, I think so with the frame. This bed, it can flex pretty easily, so you don't want to put a lot of weight on it. Other than that, it seems like it's going to be a fairly decent machine. Retailing in Canada for anywhere between $450 and $499. What the price is in the States, I don't know. I'll have to double check that, but we did have to do a little bit of tightening on the eccentric spacers, like you always have to do with a Creality product. It's just as noisy as an Ender 3 is. You can probably hear that on the mics now because we have our mics almost directly right over top of it. So other than that, would I buy it? No. I've got I've got two Ender 3s, and then I've also got two CR10Ss. So I can kind of do a decent in-between of the two. We're going to see what the quality of the dog is like, and you guys will see some photos of that at the end as well. But for now, that pretty much wraps things up for us on the Ender 5. Good, bad, or ugly, it's up to you if you want to get yourself an Ender 5. Again, everything's kind of enclosed as far as the power supply and stuff goes. It's all one footprint unit. Your only parts that stick out are right here. And I'm sure that can be jury-rigged another way. You could probably put some acrylic sides on here if you wanted to enclose it. It does come with the standard Creality hot end. It does have the Mark 8 nozzle on it, as well as a black silicone sock. So they've done away with the wrap that they had on the Ender 3s. I think I'd probably still stick with an Ender 3 Pro though. With that said, you guys have yourselves a great day. I hope everything's been good for you. I want to thank Jess, who's in the house recording for me today. There she is behind the table, or behind the camera, and behind the controls and all that other stuff. We also want to thank Spool 3D, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to show you this machine today. This is available on their website, spool3d.ca. If you're looking to get one, check them out first. We also want to thank them for the space that they give us to do the show 2 times a week from here, and then once, of course, from my home. Do it right, print it with spool3d.ca. They've got everything that you need. Like I said, from printers to filaments and all the parts and accessories. So check them out today at spool3d.ca. So don't forget, if you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Also, click that little bell so you get notified every time we put up a brand new episode. Coming up on Saturday is our live stream, so check us out at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So I believe that is 6 p.m. on the West Coast and 5 p.m. on the East Coast. Not sure, my time zones. But yeah, come hang out with us on a Saturday night during the live stream. We go for about an hour. We talk about 3D printing, and we try and help you with any of the issues that you're having with your 3D printing. So until next time, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print.